Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the place where you are connecting from. Welcome to our Save Talk today about threats and vulnerabilities and the secure by default through auto-remediation. We are focusing today in a major transformation in application security, the shift from isolated and manual activities in the security to a developer-first continuous protection. The data that we show is very, very relevant because at the end, or the last year, for example, we detected that over 45 of the production vulnerabilities comes from code that has been written with the help of generative AI tools. More than 60% of the DevOps teams push the code to production environment weekly or even daily. So we are increasing the rhythm a lot, but only 20% of the organizations has auto-remediation mechanisms in place. So at the end, we need more controls. We scan at the end of the pipeline. We have a lot of manual triage, and we can keep the pace with this increase. So we need new mechanisms, new systems, new approaches to be aligned with the new trends on development software. At the end, developers need actionable real-time feedback. Fixes should be suggested automatically in the right moment, and we need to live or to learn to use and to integrate the artificial intelligence model and tools to use them from a smart perspective. Okay, so all these things is what we call auto-remediation, how we can put in place all the automation and all the capabilities that we have now in the new context to support our developers and our DevOps team. At Xygeni and MEN, we build and we work for deploying and building these capabilities and to support the real teams in the real world. To help us today to explore this shift, this movement, and these new trends, I'm joined by Hen, Director of Engineering for Artificial Intelligence Security and MEN. Thank you, Hen, for being here today. Welcome.
Thanks for having me here. Really, I'm really happy to be here, especially when talking about such an important topic about securing by default and auto-remediation, especially when these new times of the AI era, when everything has been changed and, even the role of a software engineer is changing in the front of our eyes.
Yeah, I'm sure that you are going to bring us a lot of experience from both sides, the defensive and the offensive side of the application security and environments using this artificial intelligence at the scale. So thank you very much for sharing with us your experience and your ideas today, and to provide the audience some ideas and some good tips for the day today. Just to start talking about the topic, at the end, first point is the security by default. Is not optional more, is something that is mandatory. Regarding the latest reports from the state of the DevSecOps and this kind of similar reports, we saw that more or less 70% of the security teams still do the manual validation for critical issues. They don't apply the automation on the pipeline. So more or less, or we detect that 60% of the breaches now come from this flow in this custom code or open source components. We have very recent these issues with the npm packages. Okay, so it's something that is accelerating, and we are still doing the things manually. So I think is probably our aspirational should be to have something that is to support us to implement these mechanisms. From your experience, Hen, how do you see that or how are the engineering teams adapting to this expectation of having everything more automated, more accelerated, and how they expect the support for building this secure by default on the workflows and the day-to-day?
So basically, from what I see right now, there are many companies that still stuck in the past and basically like working with the reactive approach. But as people starting to understand the importance of being aware of the securing by default, how it affects our day-to-day life, and basically how the code generation affecting our day-to-day as a developers, I see a trend when people starting to adopt these mechanisms in order to change the way they code. Because when you think about it, the whole role of a software engineer has been changed. If in the past we were getting, even as a developer myself, getting some task defined by the product manager, and then you go and design the code and write the code yourself and upload it into a GitHub repository or whatever it is, Bitbucket, GitLab, and all the security has been happening on the pipeline side. Now it's more artificial intelligence involved in that process, which it affects also the velocity, because if in the past we were delivering 5 features in an amount of time, like now it's going to be 10x or 5x or whatever, which will lead to more code into production or into our code base, which will lead much more vulnerabilities. And all of these actually affecting the fact that securing by default is not optional anymore. And I see, like, as more as people understand it, they start to implement any controls and any tools, as we're going to talk today about how they're going to do it in the right time, and even to do it, as I call it, shift left to the shift left. Like, it's going to be even in the earlier start of the process. If shift left was the beginning in the past, I see now many people are focusing more on even not only the IDE plugins, but also like when the code is being generated, and doesn't matter if it's via Cursor, Cloud Code, Windsurf, whatever, they want the code to be secured by default. That's if the AI is able to generate the code itself, it can also make it secured, by the way. Jesus, I guess you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, I was saying that I agree with you that this movement and these new requirements to check everything as soon as possible, because at the end the tools for generating code are being integrated in the development environment, so it's almost real time. We ask for anything, and probably we are putting even in the code, in the local code, these vulnerabilities. I think anyway, it's not only about artificial intelligence. We should consider this security by default for the artificial intelligence. That is the greatest trend now. But we have still the issues with the open source component and other elements that probably are out of the code generated automatically, and we need like a last barrier, at least in the pipelines, for example, to control or to ensure to this problem. For example, these NPM issues that we have detected these days, for example, we need something to check that we are not being infected by something that is malware or has some exfiltration or these kind of things. At the end, we need this automation, not only in the integrated development environment, but also in these pipelines. That is something that probably is not fully integrated, and we need to complement the integrated development environment with the pipelines to ensure that independently on the point of entry the vulnerability, we have to control it. And because we have to implement some guardrails to control you, since you mentioned that we need to ensure that we can control and we can stop anything. So we need to put these two or these tools both in the environment of the developer, in the workstation, and also in the part of the integration part. But yes, I think that I would like to see that every pull request and everything is automatically reviewed, and that the vulnerability remediation is reduced or is controlled. And yes, I think this shift the left to the left and focus on analyzing everything as soon as possible is the best approach. The idea is to see how we move to this point. So yeah, very interesting point.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'm very interesting to know, like, from your experience at Xygeni, like, what really helped to actually your customers or your partners to actually implement these secure by default controls? Like, what made the difference? Because, it's very easy from the security engineers to push it from their side, but by the end of the day, if the teams are not implementing it correctly, it can lead to a lot of friction, right?
Exactly. I think that is really important to have some good practices or some ideas. Probably this point of mm, alignment between different teams or ensure that we automate everything in the same line, not only partial automation or only for certain set of or projects, sorry, and this kind of thing. So yes, I think that the important things are to be something applied to all the organization, to all the teams, to involve everybody in this part, and having a common goal and having a common objective for this part. So very important this point to ensure
Yeah,
that we deploy everything with success.
yeah, it's super important to know how to implement it right, because by the end of the day, it's kind of a common effort from both the security
Yeah,
team and the engineering team.
and
And we want to see the security as an enabler, not as a blocker. Many people will try to overrule any security controls in claims that it kills the velocity of the features. But by the end of the day, if you deliver something that is not secured enough, you have another problem. And
exactly.
we don't to mitigate that in any organization for sure. We want to make it as seamless as possible.
Yeah, exactly. The thing I probably is that with this the problem alignment of the alignment between the engineering and the security team probably is because of the increasing rhythm usage of the artificial intelligence generative tools, for example. Probably, I would say not 100%, but more than 90% of developers use these tools to generate code every day. So it's something that is there. So we are generating much more code than previous ways of working, for example, but the teams of QA security has the same resources and has the same capabilities. So at the end, it's a problem of speed because we are misaligning the speed of development with the checks from security and quality point of view. In this sense, and for example, combining this artificial intelligence with the velocity and how to shift the threat landscape. How do you see, or where do you see that could be the failure points in these areas to feel safe in the organization, for example, or something like that?
Well, that's very interesting because there is also like quantity related questions and also like something more philosophical about that. So when it's come to quantity, so as you said before, like more code is being pushed. All of these AI assistant or AI powered tools help us to write much more code. But as we know, as the code base is become bigger, the bigger the problems in security are, and that make the security team and the engineering team to have to invest more effort in that. But not only that, I guess that many people are aware of the fact, but it's not only comes to their mind about the security concern about that all of these models and tools are basically has been trained on open source code, which by some researchers is way less secure than enterprise code, because in enterprise code you're usually enforced to do security fixes, to implement security controls, and to behave in a very secure way. In GitHub, you don't always have this restriction or any other open source provider, which means that even if the code look professional, the output of Claude or Cursor or GPT, whatever, looks very professional, it may be misleading sometimes, because by the end of the day, the code that it has been trained on is not always the most secure that you can. And we have to take this note very carefully. We have to see what is the output. And maybe we can also have another discussion with the chat about, hey, what are the security concerns regarding this code, and do another iteration and improvement, because otherwise we don't know really what we are going to get. We have to take their advice and take their code snippets very carefully, because we don't know where it has been trained or on what, but we have the assumptions and the research that shows that it's a bit less secure than the others of the enterprise code.
It's really interesting because you have mentioned two things that I didn't consider. It's not a matter of only generating more things, but it's also generating less secure things. So we are putting twice more potential vulnerabilities, so we are even making it worse than I
It can
was
absolutely make
I was
maybe
considering at the beginning.
that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. Yes, it
yeah.
actually can be an amplifier because it's not only more
Yeah.
code being pushed, it's mainly more unsecured code can be pushed. And that's,
Mhm.
as an engineer or security professional, it makes us to make sure that everything must be reviewed and prioritized and make sure that we are not doing a lot of problems and security issues with our code base, because that's the next step when you have to handle it. But
Yeah, yeah,
alongside this challenge, I believe
yeah.
that there is an opportunity because as much as the AI can generate code, it can also help you to secure code. So you have to find this balance in between, and you have to find how to use the both abilities of the UI, the AI agent engines in order to make it work.
Mhm. It's true.
And for example, I also have a question for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, please go ahead. I sorry.
No, I was just also mentioning that you also mentioned that the tools that the teams were used to use for detecting this vulnerability and to managing this vulnerability probably are not enough with this huge increment on well, I think there are two things. One is the increment of vulnerabilities that probably the legacy tools and the traditional scanners cannot afford this volume and this speed because they need probably a lot of times they need a lot of time for doing the analysis, so they cannot do the scans as often as possible or with the time required to avoid impacting the workflow of the developers because of the amount of things that they have to detect. And the other part is that, okay, this new development approach is putting new context, new information, and new problems. So probably the traditional tools are not considering important flags in the context that are now useful for detecting new type of attacks or new vector attacks or new potential issues. So at the end, if we put everything together, probably if we put these traditional tools in the pipelines, we are putting a lot of delay in the CI/CD, and this is a barrier for the adoption because we are stopping the work of the developers. So I think this is also important, and the reason why we need new tools with new capabilities as we are developing better performance, enrich context information to detect new things.
Yeah, that's
So,
super interesting because we already have, even in the past, a problem with the vulnerability fatigue, the alert fatigue. And now it's become even much more complex because of the quantity issues. But I would like to ask you, from your perspective or from your experience, most of that, like which controls or responses you find the best that works for your customers or for your employees or colleagues when it's come to securing pipelines nowadays?
mm, how we put this in context? Well, I think what we see is mainly automation, automate everything, as we have mentioned already. Then, important, the policy as code. Be flexible in the definition of the policies, for example, and well, flexibility in general. But one point is to put flexibility in the policies, the things we have to detect, we have to analyze, this kind of these capabilities. And then the other, I think the third, just to reduce to three things, is to explain everything and explain what we find and explain why it is important or why it's a risky thing or how to contribute for the remediation and these kind of things. If I have to summarize, I think these are the three critical things that we have to integrate for implementing this in the pipelines. Automate everything, be flexible in the configuration, and that the result can be useful and actionable for the user. So what we see like a success criteria when we do a proof of concept or the user is the user implement the tool and start using it is that before the artificial intelligence code was like something that okay is more or less secure, and now no, it's important to monitor it and to have in place that we have to analyze everything that is generated. This is changing the mindset is, okay, I don't trust anything. Is the zero trust approach also for this code and this generation that is really, really important. And I think that shows this shift on the mentality and the strategies for that you have mentioned also before.
Yeah, that's super correct. And also, I find your point, your bullet, when you talk about to define the organization policy as one of the most important things. Because once the organization knows from what it wants to protect, it's way easy to detect and to prioritize and to find your own way of how to secure the pipeline or the organization, etc. Once you define a policy, for example, of I don't want critical vulnerabilities in my organization, or I don't want vulnerabilities on reachable packages, it makes it way, way easier to manage it, because by the end of the day, we are focusing on context, on priority. Our resources are limited, both on the engineering and both of the security side. So we have to find the right balance and to see what we have to focus on.
Exactly. This is really important because it's the basics to build or to define this URL or these security gates that we are going to implement to ensure that everything is compliant with this policy. But you have mentioned also one important thing is talking about remediation, independently of it's in the development environment, the pipeline, or whatever, is the why and how is to explain how the remediation is going to work at the end. What we see in some studies are that having a structured auto-remediation workflow is more than 40% faster than in the vulnerability resolution than doing in, I don't know, unstructured, okay, or allowing everything doing in a different way, or with different policies, or different approaches, or different tools. So at the end, putting something structured and having something unified for the remediation improves a lot of the speed and the resolution. So we are aligning again the speed with the detection of the vulnerabilities, and is the only way to ensure that we are aligned with the SLA also in the tools. So reducing the fixed time, seeing the remediation that support the developer and improves the collaboration between the security and engineering because everything start going aligns. I think that is a very important point for ensuring this part. In this sense of auto-remediation, delivery, and how to introduce or implement in the workflows, how do you see in your experience that the auto-remediation deliver these strongest results? If there is, I don't know, is there any pattern in the how the teams integrates the auto-remediation in the workflow in a specific job, in a specific way of working always, or is more or less depending on every organization?
Yes. Actually, from my point of view, there are few ways to look at it. The first one, it's basically the classic one, because nowadays there are still amazing open source tool, for example, like Renovate, that is a dependency management tool that will help you to upgrade your open source packages into the latest version, assuming that the latest version you have, it's less vulnerable because it contains some security fixes and bug fixes alongside that. So it's supposed to be better. It helps you to build a baseline that's more secured and also to make sure that you're up to date with your code base. And alongside that, Renovate basically helps you to make sure that you are up to date with the latest changes of the folder. And basically, that still relies on confidence, which means like you can see how many people upgraded to this new version of library. If, for example, there is a library of open source that is vulnerable and there is a new version of it and you see that many people downloaded it, it's a strong indication that you should do the same. Trust the people that are actually using it, because it can give you an indication that it's not breaking so much backwards compatibility, especially if the upgrade is new. If the new version is quite new and there are a lot of downloads, for example, you can see it as a good indicator and it will make you safer. And when it's come to securing with the AI-powered IDEs and tools, I find it even a bit more easier, and where AI come our security assistant, I personally see it kind of as stairs. Like it can be even inside of the system prompt. If, for example, you want to build some new control in your code base, so you can write your prompt, act as a software engineer. I want to write some Python data layer that does this and that. And then by the end of the prompt, you can add, please make sure to follow security principle, to avoid SQL injection, to avoid SSRF, and to be more specific than that. That can work and can be fine. A step further than that, you can define some kind of rules. For example, in Cursor, you can define the rules in MDC files, and you can define like after every time that you generate a response, please take a look at the response and try to find security issues and give a score to yourself about how secure is the code. And then you can ask it to fix it again and to give it much more secured. But if you ask me, the most comprehensive solution, it will be to actually integrate your own security tool into the IDE and then to do the following with rules. So it's basically the mix of the three of them. You can simply integrate your tool inside of the IDE and write a rule that will run the tool after every prompt output, take a look at it, fix it, and then adjust it to the code base. And once you have this comprehensive framework, you can be sure that you're actually writing code that is secured in the first place. That's, I guess, the best advantage when it comes to AI to secure by default. When you apply all of this control, it can be depends on how much lines of code there are or how complex the feature it is, but it will help you to write code that is more secured by default on the first place for sure. And
I agree. I think this is very important. This concept that you have mentioned about integrating the security tool in the IDE directly, applying every time you generate something to check the result immediately and before using it. I think that the new trends on MCP and these capabilities are a very good facilitator or enabler of to implement this approach. Just to mention that, yeah, it's true.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. You can use MCP server as well. It's definitely a very popular solution nowadays, and it can be easy to implement and just integrate with it, and it can give you the right framework that you need in order to make your code secure at the first place. And there is also some stuff that I'm wondering about auto-remediation, because the implementation is not only on the code level. It's not only technically, it's also part of the culture of the team and how to implement it when it's come to the mindset. And how you feel like it when it really works in teams, like what makes the difference when you see it works and when you see like it's not on the right way and they do it just to do it as a checkbox.
Yeah, I think that you have mentioned at the beginning, I think the main and fundamental criteria is the trust, that developers trust in the fixes, trust in the suggestion that these auto-remediation mechanisms provide and the actions, and not only the when, but even the suggestion for the remediation. Okay, so this is the fundamental point. If the developers trust if the things that the tool or the workflow is providing, they are going to accept, because in other case, they are going to reject it. They are going to see it as a more workload, additional effort to check everything. So I think first point to see that everything is working, and it's not just to say, okay, I have auto-remediation in place, is just to see the developers using it and trusting in the solution and using the output for this part. I think other things that we can see is that the remediation, the auto-remediation is continuous. It's not from time to time or on demand. It's something that is integrated completely in the workflow of the developer. In the same way that I integrate the vulnerability detection, for example, or the malware detection, whatever, that is in every pull request, ideally. Okay, the remediation is also in the same pace. Is okay, every time that I try to, in the same way that you say, in the IDE, you check everything that you generate. In the pipeline, you try to solve any vulnerability that you have detected, for example. Okay, so everything is aligned also in speed. This is also a good proof that it is something that we can trust and is integrated in the day-to-day. And then the other part is that it doesn't affect the developers. It's like transparent, let's say, more or less. So at the end, to be transparent, some good practices are, for example, instead of reviewing isolated vulnerabilities, probably you can have higher level of overview, and you can manage different risk and solve at once, or just to find more efficiency and to reduce the number of things to review and this kind of thing. So they are most best practices to simplify the adoption. But the main thing is trust and integrate it in the same pace with the detection and remediation at the same level. And I think that the definitive proof is if you talk with a developer, you feel that they are not fighting with the security tool. They are completely integrating, and it's like an additional tool, and everything is aligned, and it's something normal in the day-to use. So I think this is what we see when we finish the proofs with the customers. Okay, it's not a barrier. It's not a more new thing that I have to do. It's okay. They perceive like a value, and that they are going to save hours doing analysis, remediations.
Absolutely.
So
By the end of the day, you're right. Developers don't want to write code that is not secured. They want their business to work properly. But by the end of the day, if you make it easy for them, they will implement it right away. As long as there will be no regression in the code, they will take it easily.
Yeah, exactly. We have been talking about this automation and the trust and these kind of things. At the end, some data I have here, 80% or more or less 60% of developers have bypassed the automated security tools. And we deploy security tools for DevOps, for the CI/CD, and one of the requirements is, okay, ensure that nobody can remove the security tool from the pipeline. It's surprising, but yes, it's one of the wishes of the DevOps people.
Yeah.
So this is like in the opposite way. Okay, this is the proof that okay, is something that is not accepted, is not integrated in the day-to-day. So at the end, yes, I think that this is something that we have to do, and this is because they perceive like the automation is not transparent, or probably is putting more workload or more things to do and this kind of thing. So at the end, the idea is the experience should be designed to provide the context, to ensure potential rollbacks, to explain the suggestion very well for the developers, even to teach them new things, and they start adopting new practices. At the end, the idea is that reporting higher remediation rates, having more or stronger engagement with the developers is something that is really important. So at the end, we are not trying to replace developers, as you mentioned. We are trying to support them and giving them new tools, new capabilities to allow them to make the work or the part of the work related to the security easier, quicker, and smoothly. So I don't know. This is my experience. I don't know how do you see the approach to balance this new detection, new things to do. Probably I don't know. You have some example where it's explaining the remediation has contributed to have better adoption, for example, of these mechanisms.
Sure. So basically, this tension between the business value and delivering some new features and functionality to the business is always comes with attention to the security concerns, because the more code is being pushed, security issues may arise, etc., as we covered. But I guess that clarity and confidence is the key. So as we talked before, when it's come to software composition analysis, I find the confidence comes with the numbers. As long as people keep downloading the new version, and as long as you see in the release notes that there are no breaking changes, it will make you feel more secure to do so. And when it's come to SAST, like static code analysis of your own code, so it really helps to get the explanation and to see the diff, like the actual difference between the fixed code that the scanner or the tool, security tool suggests to you, to what you wrote. And once the explanation is enough, that you understand like it sounds reasonable, it will make you way easy to make the decision to change. But of course, everything comes with a price. If, for example, I will see like the remediation is like too complex and a lot of new files in order to fix one low severity vulnerability, maybe it will be way harder to implement it. Sometimes you just have to be like clear, concise, readable, and the explanation should make sense. And if it will not be easy to apply, it will make it very hard to do so. And another important factor, it's writing tests. Because once you have test coverage, it will help you to fix your code in more confidence. When I see teams that they have a good test coverage on the function level, they're not afraid to make changes when it comes to security fixes, because they know that if the tests are passing, their code will pass too, even with a security fix. And as we can use AI for writing code and to secure code, we also can use AI for writing tests for us, right? So we can do kind of an iteration, kind of a whole movement of writing some tests, writing the code, fixing the security issue that may arise. And then once we'll have all these three components together, we can ensure that our code is way more stable because it has the unit test, and it's way more secure because we fixed it, and we will feel way more comfortable to fix the upcoming security issues that may arise in the future. That's in my opinion.
Yeah.
But sometimes people just resist to some kind of automation. Like, did you saw some pattern that help people to go with that, to accept that? Because some developers will stay developers, like they will be against security, blah blah blah, and not have enough awareness about the risk to the organization itself. And this can be very tricky. Like, did you find some patterns or some ways to make it work better, this relationship between the security and the velocity?
Yes, first agree with all your contribution, your points of view here regarding this level of adoption, regarding confidence, trust, and these kind of things. I will add that when still the team reject the adoption of these kind of things, most of the time is because they see that they are having or receiving much more alerts. So it's the typical alert fatigue. Okay, so they are having more
Classic
things
one.
or more topics to this one. So one thing that we usually apply also is, okay, instead of managing everything, let's try to reduce this number at the beginning, okay? Until we have the system fine-tuned and everything is working as we expect. So just to reduce this sense, this feel about the alert fatigue, okay, let's prioritize and let's put focus on what is really important, what is really affecting the security, and just to try to focus on the things that are going to generate the biggest return of investment, let's say. So for this, what we do is apply prioritization based or a flexible mechanism to provide or to allow the customer create their own prioritization criteria, so we can filter in different stages depending on the capability or the capacity of the team or whatever, the vulnerabilities they have to put in the auto-remediation system. Okay, instead of applying for everything, you apply several filters, you focus on what is most important, and probably you can reduce until 10% or 30%, just to having or starting small, let's say, and then starting increasing the number of vulnerabilities that you manage with the auto-remediation system.
Kind of adoption process. You mean you want them to get used to it, and as long as they trust the process, you let them to actually adopt it more and more. That's great, actually. That's awesome.
Exactly. So for this, you need some mechanisms to prioritize and to build this or to discard these things until you reach the set of the vulnerabilities that you have to focus. But yes, this is the also is traditional, start small and then grow. That is more or less this applied in this way. With this, I think they changed the mindset. They stop feeling this new burden set of things, and they just start adapting or integrating the new way of working, as you mentioned. Yeah, it's really that part. Okay. Also, We have mentioned a lot of things, but and we have been talking about the specific artificial intelligence native development and new threat models. And we are mentioning that the artificial intelligence is becoming part of the how we write the code and how we include our applications in other places. Another study also mentioned that more or less 40% of the vulnerabilities in the applications supported by artificial intelligence was not in the model itself. It was derived by of some changes in the way of working of this application. Until now, everything was more predictive or more statistical, but now we have a different way of generating the things, and we see new ways of attack the application, the proof injection, model manipulation, the supply chain pollution, new ways to generate insecure code. So at the end, the traditional threat modeling and these strategies probably need some revamp also. So instead of being so deterministic, now we need to put some variables on top of that. Based on your experience doing this analysis of, or because you are very close of this new way of doing software, uh, from your experience, the red team for application AI native systems, or how they detect new attack vectors or security gaps, or how is changing this red teaming activity?
So basically, as we just talked before, like the new world of the AI, in addition to the fact that we can generate code with AI, we also have the AI-powered application, which is actually applications that their own base, like the work against LLM, and they generate a response based on that. It can also be in a very strict way of a workflow. It can be also in an agentic way, that calling tools or calling other services. And all of these just expose us to a new world of security issues, basically a new attack surface, you could call it. And during red teaming, which is basically a way to try to exploit your system by defining a target and then running a set of probes against it, we can easily find a new types of attacks. And these new types of attacks are getting revealed by the fact that you are trying to exploit the system in many different ways. Try to convince it to misbehave, try to extract data from other customers, try to make it to give output that is inappropriate or violate some privacy or hate speech. It can be any one of those. And the new risk when yields from red teaming tests are basically can be a prompt injection, which can actually be described as the way that the system misbehave in a jailbreak specifically, and also a data leakage, which we called also a tenant leak. For example, if it's an airline chatbot and you're trying to get some information about other customer, about his flight, about his data, about his bills related to this company, and also the fact that as complex as this system becomes, and the more agentic they're calling tooling by themselves, which can yield to a lot of unexpected results. Unexpected results can be associated also with security issues. For example, if there is a system that it's multi-agent one, and one tool from one agent is calling to another, and then it works against the database, and then it comes back to the agent, and then you have to do some processing in it, that can yield to some security breaches too. And when it's come to defense, so we have to actually apply new set of controls, new set of basically a new mindset. Because if, as you said, the code up to now was very deterministic, conditional, if, else, we all know the drill. But now the game is different. Sometimes we'll just have a black box. And we have to find a way how to secure it. So first of all, it's starting with every security best practice as defining your baseline. For example, I don't want to use a model that is open source that contains vulnerabilities or malicious behavior. And then I recommend specifically about a cycle of red teaming alongside system prompt hardening. Because by the end of the day, when you define a target, it can be an API endpoint of AI powered service.
Exactly.
By the end of the day, It can be a system prompt that connected to a model. It can be a model that you train by yourself. It can be a model from Hugging Face, and it can be a model from any provider. It can be OpenAI or whatever it is. But by the end of the day, the system prompt is the one who writes the instructions to the model and also deals with an input. So when you do red teaming tests and you find out that you have some issues with data leakage, the solution, the easy solution, can be to improve and harden your system prompts and to give the system prompt instruction, hey, do not reveal data on this and that. You have to take the data only from the token that you actually got. And also add some validations on this side, before the system prompt and after the system prompt. When you combine this cycle of system prompt hardening and red teaming together, you will make sure that in like more than 50% will be more secured in the next cycle iteration. And if you do it regularly, you can ensure that the system will be way more secured. And also you have to implement some kind of guardrails, which can be on the model level or on the service level. If you're using Bedrock, you can apply some content filters, and you can also define guardrails by other runtime products. And also one important note, it's like in very complex AI systems, there is no way out when you see anomalies until you learn how to work with the system to keep the human in the loop, especially when we are working with sensitive information and service to service that doing unexpected behavior. Sometimes you just may integrate the human in the loop. For example, send a Slack notification or email to approve some specific answers. You don't want to give your AI systems too much permissive abilities. That was my main point, if you ask me. But I guess that by the end of the day, the combination is the key. You have to apply as much controls as you need to this new world, this new mindset, because now we have a new guy in the block, and you have to find a way how to secure it properly. And actually, it's not only from this side, like also the threat modeling should be changed. And maybe you have more experience than me about that, like how you see the threat modeling handle issues that related to AI and the new services.
How do you see, because you have mentioned something, I agree with all this at the end, is like the traditional receipts for doing things, the guardrails, the human in the loop, and these things, but applied to new scenarios, new contexts, and new things. But you have mentioned is about new mindset, new controls. Before probably the red team knows about security programming. Do you think that they now need something regarding that data science or something like that, new capabilities to manage all these data sets? How I think that is a new skill for them probably, because this is the new part of the models, to train the models, to detect things there.
Absolutely. And maybe in the future, we will see, as we have AppSec engineers, we will see AI-sec engineers. That's a good question. For example, in the cloud security domain, it can be the DevOps or the DevSecOps, and it's a different persona. Who knows what the future will bring when it's come to this one?
Interesting. It's just a personal view that I wanted to check with you. That's very, very interesting. We are running out of time, so we have a lot of things to talk, but I'm going to probably just to touch a couple of points I would like to discuss with you is something important probably that is it's about the remediation with artificial intelligence. As you have mentioned, we need the human in the loop. We are not actually replacing people, and we are not replacing the security expert. I think that the idea is to, although we have a lot of hype around the artificial intelligence replacing works and these kind of things, actually the real value, I think, is enhancement and improving the efficiency and the productivity of the teams, okay, and to be able to face new challenges, as you mentioned before. I think the idea is to support them to use these tools correctly, that these tools support the security expert, reducing the triage time, prioritizing the findings based on new criteria like exploitability, reachability, I don't know, all these things, okay? So at the end, the idea is, what about if we can reduce by 60% the time to remediate? I think it's what we are searching for with this application or the application of these tools. So, but you have mentioned also that very often the artificial intelligence is like a black box. So I think this is one of the things that are not supporting or allowing this part. Based on your experience, when you see delivering of artificial intelligence, how do you see the impact in the remediation, some test or whatever, and the safeguards and the safeguards and the design of the choices, how help make that automation is more usable for the developers or for the security expert and these kind of things?
So basically, on top of what we have just covered around integrating in the IDE first and to be secured by default, even before the prompt has been get out to the user, you can use AI as a new security assistant tool. Like you can use your favorite scanner or security tool, get an output into a JSON, XML, or whatever format you like, and let him to work with that. Just take this JSON output as an input and tell me which vulnerabilities are more secured or more important or less important, and give me a prioritization. What can I ignore, and explain me why. And once you will have all these explanations, it will make you to be on the context. And as we know in security, the context is the king. And as long as I will have these AI security assistants next to me, so I will be able as a developer to develop much faster security issues and fixes and to be focused on what's really important. But sometimes I'm pretty sure that AI also, it's not the right solution in every team and every solution and every problem that may comes up. When do you think the AI should be adopted, and when you think it should be not the most favored solution?
Well, I think, or one of the main issues with these tools, from my point of view, is that not for all use cases you can expect always the same result. Okay, so it's not deterministic. So at the end, I think this is the main critical point. You can apply this to use cases that you have demonstrated that you are going to have something that is always more or less the same, or applies always the same criteria, something that is confident to apply. Because if you don't trust in the solution that the artificial intelligence is providing you, you are not going to apply it, because it's going to need a review every time you generate something. So at the end, you are going to do the work automatically and manually. So you are actually increasing the workload. So I think that you have to validate the specific use case and test the solution and ensure that is confident, in the sense that is almost deterministic, let's say. Okay, so I think this is the main criteria. I think that we have evolved. At the beginning, if you tried to solve any vulnerability in the code, it was not trustful, because it depends on the time of the day you ask. But now I think that the models has evolved, and now it's quite confident to ask for a remediation or for something. If you put the correct and refined prompt, you are going to have something that is quite deterministic, and that is something that you is quite confident to apply. Okay, so I think that is a matter of time. Now we have a set of use cases, remediation, triage, support in some prioritization areas. But the thing is, we are going to have more and more and more on the time. Okay, so I would focus on triage, prioritization, suggesting fixes for the code, for example. Okay, but others doesn't need artificial intelligence. Remediation for components doesn't need, actually, it's something that you can solve with programmatic approaches. So, okay, I would prefer, if you can solve something programmatically, use it. It's going to be better. And then for use cases that has been validated, where the traditional approach is not good enough because of consumption of resources, time needed to do the things and these kind of things, try the artificial intelligence. So I think these are the two stages. Yeah.
It's interesting because it's kind of a trend of between easy of implementation and clarity. And the most clarity and confident you want to be, write it in a programmatic way. the most easy you want to deploy it, or maybe the most not deterministic you can live with, go with that. It's just to do this trade-off for a specific case. It really depends on the use case. I personally, I don't believe that everyone should go with AI first for every feature. It's like, it really depends on the situation. In many cases, it could be a great fit, but sometimes it's just not like that. If something has to be super deterministic and not controlled by any temperature or any unexpected behavior, maybe AI is not the right solution, especially if it's easy to implement without. So it's really a trade-off that you have to manage in the engineering side.
Yeah, the balance. Yeah, we have 5 minutes just to finish. Two things. One is we have reviewed a lot of different things. The first one, okay, we have put in value the artificial intelligence and all the contributions and all the advantages. But I think we have introduced a bit that limitations. What do you see that in the real world, okay, could generate friction for the adoption of these auto-remediation solutions in the day-to-day? Just like probably like a summary or something like that for things that I think we have already mentioned.
Yeah, sure. So basically, when implementation becomes hard, it's when it makes a lot of noise. And it makes a lot of noise, especially when the tool is too aggressive. Especially, I believe that for the security guys, the worst thing that can happen is a false negative. For the developer, the worst thing that can happen is a false positive. And for example, I had a case in my past, like we used one tool to static code analysis, and it yielded so many results. So we basically were fighting with it all day long in order to fix these issues that are not really issues. We had to go manually one by one to make sure what is real and what is not. And if you have the ability to tune the tool and make it less aggressive and more like into the right case and show me only the specific stuff, don't show me problems that are in comment or not in context, not reachable, I don't want to deal with that one. I want to deal only with the most prioritized stuff. And also, I want to make it easy to suppress. If you give me like 100 findings, I want to be able to focus on the right one and suppress what is not relevant to me. I guess that's the right point if I had to give it in the limited time. And when you look at it from your perspective, when you have to fix some implementation or applications, what did the difference on your end?
Well, I think that very aligned with these topics that you have mentioned, the false positive, false negatives that are related with the trust and the confidence. A couple of things are related to the flexibility that I mentioned at the beginning also, that if you are very strict and you don't have agility to adapt to the things, because when you start doing things, you need to fine tune the system and you need some flexibility and some agility just to facilitate the adoption and this kind of thing. So probably start with simple processes or simple solutions approaches and to being able to change quickly, let's say. The other thing that is not related with the technology, it's more related with the organization and the culture probably, is that who is the owner of this part? Is engineering, is security, because at the end, if there is no, I think if there is no one responsible, unique responsible, or that could be responsible to coordinate everything, they are going to find, no, it's because it's a topic or a matter of the other team. So at the end, there should be one responsible to make it works and coordinate everybody and to put everybody on the same line, on the same page, and making them work together. I think these are the three important things: the trust, the flexibility to adapt at the beginning, and the ownership. I think but it's also the same when you try to change the way of working. When we were implementing Scrum or Agility, it was the same. Who is the responsible of making the teams working in this new philosophy? So yeah, I think this is the important thing to make the cultural shift of the developers and the security team. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Can't agree more with that one.
So we are 1 hour. I see a couple of questions here, but before yes, if you have to summarize for the audience, so they take 2, 3, or a few ideas to start applying this or to start implementing in their organization, what do you see most relevant or the most important thing they should consider for apply tomorrow, for example, or something like that?
So I would love to say shift left to the shift left. Try to implement the security as earlier as you can. If in the past it was in the pipeline, now it was inside of the generation phase. If you are working with Gen AI tools, just let them do the security for you. Implement them. It can be an MCP server, it can be any rules, it can be inside of the prompt itself, but you have to make sure that security taken into account. In addition to that, you can ask the AI to write the test for you. As we have mentioned earlier, if you will have the unit test and the security and the code generation together, you will get amazing results. And last but not least, it's basically to know how to pick the right tool and stick to it. Find a tool that fits your needs and it works the best for you and to your engineering team or security teams, and just work with it, because otherwise it can make a lot of noise.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that from my point of view, I would say also, well, something that we mentioned before. Start small and then allow the teams adopt the new way of working, the new solution step by step. So I think this is quite important. Okay, yes, it depends on the people, but usually it works. The next thing, don't implement something partially. It's better to implement the full solution in something small, okay, and then extend to the rest of areas or the rest of projects or the rest of things. But don't make the solution more complex in each step, because at the end you are going to be always learning. Remind that the prioritization is something that support to reduce this alert by fatigue, just to facilitate the teams to adopt these things, and then measure impact for your directors, your boss, your team, just to demonstrate that you are reaching improvement and that you are improving the way of working, the security KPIs, for example, the time to fix and these kind of things. And support the cultural change of the people, just with training or supporting, putting, I don't know, some, it's not the leader, it's the champion of the auto-remediation. Invent something just to support the change of the mindset of the people. I think these are
It's all about the
the
people
key
eventually.
points. Yeah.
Absolutely. By the end of
Exactly,
the day,
exactly.
they are the one who implementing the controls, and they're the one who is working with the code and the security. That's correct. Love
Okay.
that one.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to put a couple of questions here. The first one from the chat some time ago, and just we are going to take a few minutes more, just because we have a lot of people connected. The question is, I don't know if we can see in the screen, how can we put into code assist LLMs our own example code that we want to use as the base?
You can insert it into as a rule, for example, or you can take it and configure it inside of the prompt itself. Or maybe you can clarify it a bit more. I just can't see the question.
I don't know if it's in the chat. I don't know if we have more information, but I think that probably is related to the prompt engineering and this kind of thing. So I don't know. Probably we can use this prompt as a guide to the artificial intelligence to create an appropriate fix. Okay. In the long term. Sorry.
When changing the prompt of your system, you basically you need to have your own benchmarks. For example, if your service is detecting XYZ, you have to write some tests to make sure that you detect XYZ. And then when you change the system prompt, you have to make sure that the same behavior remains. And that will help you to make sure that you also fix the security issue, but functionality level is not getting harmed. Maybe that helps.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think at the end, Yeah, I think that probably there are techniques to augment the prompt. Probably something that the most usual technique is using retrieval augmenting generation with embeddings. So I don't know. I don't probably if they put some additional explanation on here, but yes. Mhm. Okay, I have another question here. Probably, yeah, this one is: what's the common misconceptions about auto-remediation? Is related with many teams. Assume that auto-remediation is dangerous or ineffective. What's the biggest myth that we have encountered, and how would you reframe it?
So when it's come to myths around auto-remediation, many people claim that, yeah, maybe it's fast now, but it will come and take a lot of time later on because you're not really aware of the fix, and you will face some bugs in the future. But I believe that if you have enough coverage and enough confidence in the fix, it will not happen. Basically, it's the whole idea is to reduce the time to solve the issue.
Okay, yeah, I agree. At the end, I think it's a matter of trust. So at the end, why is dangerous? If you demonstrate that you apply the solutions and everything works, and you remove the vulnerabilities and you reduce the time to fix and these kind of things, is something that is quite objective. At the end, you demonstrate with data that is working, that is not affecting the rest of the thing. So it's just a matter of prove it, demonstrate, and it's not something subjective. So I think that it's a good point. We have some other questions, but I think we are over the time for a lot of some, and we need to close. We take note on the questions, and we answer by email or in the platform or whatever, so you can check it again. So we are finishing. Thank you very much, Hen, for
It was my
being with us
pleasure.
today.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you again also to everybody for joining us today. Um, if there is one thing that we have to take away from this session is that secure by default is not something from the future or for the future. It's something that you should have starting evaluating today. So auto-remediation is how we make that possible at scale, reducing the time to fix, lowering manual error and manual activities, and supporting developers to move faster and focusing on developing new functionalities and new innovations for the business. Okay, not resolving things. So as we have seen, important clarity over control, fundamental. Artificial intelligence is a partner, is not a replacement or something to accelerate any other things. Visibility to put everybody in the same line. Okay, fundamental. So if you are asking yourself if you are ready to try the auto-remediation in your software development life cycle, I would say yes. You have some tips to start doing it. So start trying, start with one trust fix. Give the first step. Okay. To keep momentum, if you want, I think we usually share the recording if you want to review today's session, or if you want to have some guidance, probably we can share some connections. You feel free to connect with Hen and with me for anything that we can support. And thank you again for being here, and I hope to see you all of you on the next Save the Talk next week. This month, sorry. Okay, so thank you very much and see you all.
Bye bye.